This is Fans on the Run, a podcast made by, for, and about Beatles fans. And now, here's your host, Alexanian.
Alright, welcome back to Fans on the Run, the second most popular Beatle podcast that I host, or co-host for that matter. It's February now, something, hazy shade of winter, something, Simon and Garfunkel the Bangles. See, this is, what you're witnessing right now is practically performance art. I'm breaking down my introduction to its bare essentials, because I don't know how to prepare for things. See, this is why it's good that none of you are able to see my Word document to prepare for this, because you'll be able to see how half-assed this show really is. But, again, this is probably the most common phrase on this show. I digress. We have a great guest for you today. I'm really excited because I've gotten to know this guy doing another show on another internet personalities page who I will not mention because it's my show. But, I'm quite excited. He's quite honestly a jack of all trades. He's a singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist who has shared the stage with more cool and notable people than I'm even capable of mentioning. He's a Beatle tribute veteran who's played with, he's played every Beatle in his chosen bands at some point. He's played with, remember the British Invasion at Epcot? He subbed in quite a bit for those guys, and he's currently with a group called BeatleBeat. Would you please welcome Charlie Cosa?
Yay!
Welcome to Fans on the Run.
Thank you so much for having me. This is very, very cool. I don't know if I'm supposed to be really sedate like a radio person.
No.
Hi.
No.
Or,
this show's a dumpster fire, Charlie. See, you're basing your most recent episode that you listened to is probably not a good benchmark for level of sedateness.
Well,
but that's a story for another time.
I've listened to quite a few of them, man. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Fans on the Run, so I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm a fan of Charlie DeCosa.
Oh, that's ridiculous, but I do appreciate you having me on. So we get to talk Beatles. What could be better?
Well, we get to talk Beatles, and we get to talk other things too, because it's my show, and we get to talk about whatever.
Like BNL.
Well, BNL, because as if I don't mention it every 5 minutes, I'm Canadian. I'm Canadian, and every Canadian is required by law to like the Barenaked Ladies.
Do you also have to like Michael Bublé and Rush?
Rush, yes. More so at this point, the Tragically Hip.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's in order to get your driver's license. I think you need to own at least 4 Tragically Hip albums. When the lead singer or frontman Gord Downie died, it was basically like, I don't know if he was laid in state, but the way all the ceremonies played out, it felt that way.
So if we're gonna talk about BNL, I gotta ask you right off the bat. Are you good with post Stephen BNL? Are you good with that?
I don't know too much post Stephen BNL.
Really.
Because we're Canadian, or I'm Canadian. Why am I speaking in we? I think every Canadian record shop or CD shop, the discount bin, the overflow, is full of copies of the album Gordon. Because that's
understandable,
the most popular album.
Oh yeah, it's great, and it's friggin' great from cover to cover.
Well, that's why I feel bad for you Americans, because the big Barenaked Ladies song is 1 week, I think. Here it's If I Had $1 Million. Everyone knows the words to that.
Of course, If I Had $1 Million. 1 week off of Stunt was pretty popular, and It's All Been Done was a hit for them over here as well. The Pinch Me was a hit for them over here. But the first time I saw the band was after Stephen left. So I tell you, all the albums that came after he left, I really enjoyed, and kind of got that. it wasn't my introduction to the band. My introduction to the band was a live concert they did in Orlando that they had released as a recording, and I think that had I can't remember what album they were touring at that time, but it was a fantastic album. But like Silver Ball and all of those albums that came out recently, I really like that stuff, and I really like Jim Cregan's bass playing. Not many people could play like that and get away with it, because he plays a lot, but it works. It works for that band. Did you see when they did the reunion? Did we talk about that?
At the Junos. That was like the first
Juno
thing
Awards.
That was like the first thing you asked me when I told you I wanted you to be on the show. It's like, maybe you can finally explain to me who all those other people were. And I'll admit right now, I don't know either.
And you know what? They didn't know if I had $1 million. All those people on stage singing, they had no idea. It was hysterical. But, you know, I think Steve and Ed knew that they didn't know, and they just, you know, forged on anyway.
I really appreciated the part where they were like, it's time for, you know, Kraft Dinner sponsorship.
It's been 30 years, come on. Yeah, I think everybody was hoping there would be more reunion stuff after that, but I think Ed was able to just say, okay, this is what it's going to be. We're going to do this, but we're still going to move on with our Fake Nudes album and whatever came after that.
Well, I think talking about the Barenaked Ladies is a good way to segue, because you like a lot of other music that isn't the Beatles. So I want to ask you, if you had to pick like your top 5 favorite groups or bands or singers, who would that top 5 list include?
NRBQ would be at the top of the list. So
New Rhythm and Blues Quartet.
Yeah, we talked about them quite a bit. They've been around since the late 60s, and I got a live album of theirs. Well, actually, it was my brother's live album called Diggin' Uncle Q. And I listened to it, and it was so dissonant sounding, and I didn't get it. But they had a cover of Just the Way You Are by Billy Joel. And for some reason, I listened to that track. Didn't realize until years later that it's actually, at the time, karaoke was getting popular, and they used to make fun of it by doing karaoke on stage. So it's them putting their instruments down, playing a karaoke track, and they all had these big poster boards with the lyrics, and they would take turns singing. And it made the album, because that's just how goofy those guys are. But once I learned, kind of listened to that album over and over, all of a sudden it started making, what I was hearing made sense to me. And people will say all the time, like, oh, this changed the way I listen to music, or this is, you know, they go overboard with how much stuff means to them. And I'm usually like, oh, shut up, you know, I don't want to hear any of that. But NRBQ changed the way I listen to music. They were
NRBQ isn't particularly, they should be a lot more well-known than they are, but if you had to describe NRBQ to someone, how would you describe them?
It is, they're called omnipop is the category, because it's like wherever popular music is or was, NRBQ went there and left. And if anything gets too popular and they're doing it, they go a different direction. It's like, I think I had told you, it's like a mix of Thelonious Monk, the Beatles, old country. You just never, that band played the Newport Jazz Festival and then turned around and played at the Grand Ole Opry. You know, it's just, they're those kinds of players. And their fan club includes Keith Richards, Bonnie Raitt, Elvis Costello, McCartney. McCartney is an NRBQ fan.
Now explain to the fan or the people at home who McCartney is.
Paulie.
Yeah.
Little Paulie. I don't want to go on too much of a tirade about them, but you have to see it and experience it. They're really wacky. They do wacky things with music, and a lot of times the songs that you know and play, they'll play it. I hate to say that they don't play the same song the same way twice, but they play with a freedom that jazz brings, like a jazz sensibility to rock and roll. And I've always loved that idea, but no one else did it quite in that way. You could say like Steely Dan is an infusion of jazz and rock and roll, but it's in a completely different way. NRBQ brings the freedom that jazz has, and still just rocks. I love them. I can't say enough. But you said 5, so let's go on. So NRBQ, the Beatles, obviously. Are we skipping the Beatles, or are we including them?
Let's skip the Beatles, because that's kind of an inevitability.
Kiss. I've been a Kiss fan since I was 5 and watching Phantom of the Park over and over and over again. So,
do you think that shaped who you are as a person? Watching Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park?
I think so. Again, what a wacky movie, but so much fun. Like, they don't even like talking about it. And Paul Stanley will say, "Oh, I don't even know what happened at the end of that movie." Well, nobody does. Max Devereaux turns around and he's got like silver gray hair. He turned old and can't talk and he's crying. Well, who knows? But it's just awesome because
Kiss to destroy Kiss.
That's it. Yeah, see, you know it. Holy crap. Good for you.
Well, I have it on DVD actually.
Oh, really?
I have this Kiss kind of box set Kissology thing.
Kissology. Oh yeah. So you have Kiss Meets the Phantom. You have
I have the weird European
Attack of the
re-edit.
Phantoms.
Attack of the Phantom. The European re-edit.
So that one, when I watched that, it was really freaky because they use like music from the Kiss solo albums as the filler music on that. But the American version, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, used different almost like porn
stock music.
Yeah, like weird crazy music, and that's what I was used to. So, and the film is edited slightly different. I have it on VHS is the only copy I have of Phantom of the Park. Okay, so let's see.
Actually, you brought up the solo albums, so while we're on this Kiss tangent, apologies to the listeners out there who clicked on this Beatles podcast, and we're about 12 minutes in, and we haven't mentioned the Beatles.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll burn that bridge when we cross it.
Exactly.
Which is your favorite solo album? Which is a dumb question because I think I know the answer, because it's everyone's favorite.
I'm going to say...
Don't worry, if you say the wrong answer, I will think less of you as a person.
So, I think your opinion would be that everybody would say Ace Frehley.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the only one I own.
I really love Gene Simmons' album, and I like it.
It's got our good friend Mitch on it.
It does. And it has See You Tonight, which they did on Unplugged, which was great. It's also got When You Wish Upon a Star, which I thought was very brave of Gene to do. And he does a nice job. He does a real nice job. And
if
I like some of the
different cover, I think it might work better. If it wasn't Gene Simmons with blood rippling out of his mouth, just with like a red aura.
But I like a lot of the stuff. Like once I learned who played on Peter Criss's solo album, that it was some of the guys who had played in Steely Dan, some fantastic studio guys he surrounded himself with. That's a good one, and I like Paul's as well.
Paul's is the other one that isn't an unacceptable answer.
Right.
Because it kind of sounds like what you think Kiss would sound like.
And I like what that ushered in. I think those solo albums ushered in stuff like Dynasty, which I wasn't opposed to Dynasty. Some people are. It's like, Kiss doing disco or whatever. But who cares? It's Kiss. They were still Kiss.
Do you know what I like more than Dynasty?
The Elder.
Unmasked.
Really?
Yeah.
Unmasked is a good one too, and the 80s stuff.
It's even poppier.
Yep. Yep. I know, it's got Shandy on it, right?
It's got Shandy, it's got Talk to Me.
Yeah.
It's got two sides of the coin.
That's that was a good one, and I like the '80s. I like the stuff with Bruce Kulick when they weren't wearing makeup. Bruce just seems like a really cool guy. I follow him on Facebook.
He does, but my favorite '80s Kiss has got to be the Vinnie Vincent stuff.
Really?
Oh, come on. I was this close. I had it in my hands. I almost bought the first Vinnie Vincent Invasion album.
Yeah.
Just because it's just one of... I don't even have the words to describe the Vinnie Vincent Invasion. It's just bizarre.
Yeah. I like stuff like they did I'm Alive, which was... If you listen to it and you just think this is Kiss doing Van Halen and this is Paul Stanley doing David Lee Roth, it's exactly what it is, and I think it's hysterical.
Kind of
I like
bring it
Rise
full
to...
circle here. Sorry I interrupted you.
No, go ahead.
And it's not even the right era of Kiss. Kiss kind of introduced me to the Dave Clark Five. Any Way You Want It.
Any Way You Want It, yep.
Yeah. Which, for some reason, this is honestly bizarre for a British invasion band from, 1965 to sound heavier and harder than the hard rock band that is covering them. That record is just insane.
Yeah.
All those Dave Clark 5 records, it's like, people describe the Phil Spector stuff as the wall of sound. The Dave Clark 5 is just the wall of sound.
I think so many of their tunes, I guess when they came over, both of us are too young to remember when all of that actually went down. I'm surprisingly too young, and you are definitely too young. But
why's that?
But they people thought that they were going to overtake the Beatles. Thinking back on it, I'm not sure how that happened, but they were a great party band. The music is great party music, which the Beatles arguably are not. I don't find the Beatles music to be party music. But Dave Clark 5, you put any of that stuff on, and all of a sudden people are dancing and having a good time. I enjoy that as well. Did you like And Then She Kissed Me? Off a Love Gun with Kiss as well?
Not as much.
No? Well,
no, I'm a fan of the Crystals, but...
Talking about Kiss covers, that was one where I was, I heard it and it's just bizarre enough that I kind of dig it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did we say here? We said...
Okay, you said NRBQ.
Kiss, BNL. So I would rank Barenaked Ladies up there. Van Halen, I would say Van Halen. When I was,
are you more David Lee Roth or Van Hagar?
I'm one of those weird people who like all of it, even Gary Cherone.
Okay.
I will say that I saw Van Halen with Sammy Hagar. I saw them on the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge tour. That was one of my first big concerts that I went to, and I loved that album. That was the album that got me into Van Halen. So I was into Van Hagar before I was into Roth, and then I went to see the Roth Hagar tour that they did together, and left in the middle or towards the middle end of Hagar's part. He closed the show because it just turned into a Jimmy Buffett concert. They had girls bringing him margaritas on stage and beach balls, and it just seemed like I'm at a Buffett show. What is this? I wanted it.
Why am I in the Kokomo music video?
Right. And I get, it's advertising and it's what he has to do to sell tequila and stuff, but for me, at least that night, Roth took it. But I like all of it, and even Gary Cherone stuff it's what a weird Van Halen album Van Halen 3 is, but there's just moments on it where I love it, and but when I was a kid, before I became a bass player, which is what I do mostly, I wanted to be a guitar player, and I wanted to be Eddie Van Halen. So I sat and watched Live Without a Net over again and watched the screen and tried to play with it as much as I could. And, I wanted to be one of those types of guitar players, but it never happened. So the fifth, gosh, I think coming to mind, the only thing that's really coming to mind is like anything that's related to Brian Setzer.
Okay.
I don't really care for many of the guitar heroes that everybody else loves. I was never a Hendrix fan, certainly not a Stevie Ray Vaughan fan.
Wait, hold on, back up. You weren't a Hendrix fan?
No, it's not that I disliked it, but I would never grab a Hendrix album and put it on to play along with or dig on it. I appreciate what it was, but I would much rather grab. Oh, I didn't even mention the Monkees. How could I not mention the Monkees? Probably the Monkees before Brian Setzer. All right, and if I was one of the, even in my 20s, 30s, or now, if I had to go see a concert and it was Jimi Hendrix opening up for the Monkees, I would still be more excited to see the Monkees than I would to see Jimi Hendrix. I was just never one of those guys who was into those guitar hero guys, I wasn't into Joe Satriani. And that's funny because I was into Eddie, but Eddie, I was into the band.
Yeah.
I was into the quartet, not necessarily just Eddie Van Halen's guitar playing. So yeah, I guess the Monkees would round it out. And before I was into the early Kirshner albums, I was into the later albums. I was into Birds and Bees and Instant Replay, and Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Jones was the first Monkees vinyl I owned. So that was the stuff I liked first, all the stuff that Shorty Rogers arranged for and the band did there. And then I got into the Kirshner stuff and then landed in Headquarters kind of last. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they would probably be at the top of the heap. I'll give honorable mention to the Spice Girls and to S Club 7 as well. Not necessarily bands, but pop music that I really like. Do you even know who S Club 7 is?
I know vaguely.
So they were like a British pop version of the Monkees, kind of. They had a TV show. It was S Club in Miami, and then S Club in somewhere else in America. But it's a British band, boys and girls, and they plopped them here in America, and they made a TV show out of it. And their music was the Monkees formula. They performed the songs each week, and I actually got into the show at much too old age for somebody to be getting into that kind of show. But then I started liking the music, and I like syrupy pop stuff, so it's good syrupy pop stuff.
Well, you mentioned records, and don't worry, this may be the segue to finally talk about those guys who the show's kind of about. What was the first record you remember getting?
My brother gave me two vinyls. My first vinyls were Meet the Beatles, which as a high school kid I gifted to somebody else, and I regret it, and Sgt. Pepper. And the funny thing about Sgt. Pepper is there were scratches and noises on the record that even when I got the CD, and even to this day, sound weird to me without those scratches and noises. Like at the end of Little Help from My Friends, on my record it went, little help from my and then the record would go and like there's this like scratch sound on it, and I still listen for that every time I hear the recording, even though it's not on any other recording.
Have you done like a needle drop of that record?
I should recreate that for myself, but those were my first Beatles records. And like,
were they your first records, period?
Good question. Those were my first records, period. I got those, and then I think I remember my brother Tony, ordering me the Kellogg's 45s of Banana Splits.
Okay.
So I had Yep, I had the Banana Splits 45s and the Beatles records. And then I started collecting some vinyls, and I had a good vinyl collection until I was in college, and we kept moving it from apartment to apartment. And I said, what do I need this stuff for? And I threw out boxes and boxes of vinyls, stuff that you can't hardly get. I put it in a dumpster. Who's leaving on a jet plane? That was come on, you remember his name? I'll think of it. Just
why was the first name that came to mind Joe Cocker? Was that him?
No. It was the folk John Denver.
John Denver.
Some John Denver records that, from what I understand, are hard to get. I had records that were sent to radio stations that were because I think my sister had gotten a whole stack of records from the radio station on Long Island, stuff that they had been getting rid of,
If you threw out like radio station promos of like the Who or the Kinks or whatever, I would fly to Florida right now and
the Who I probably got rid of. The Kinks I didn't have. I had the Sleepwalker album by Kinks. Okay, I love that album.
I've never really been much into the later Kinks.
Yeah.
Like, the Kinks didn't make music after 1970.
Yeah,
with the exception of Father Christmas and Come Dancing.
Mr. Big was on that Sleepwalker album. The Sleepwalker song was great. There's some good stuff on that. It's worth checking out. Yeah. But maybe it's just because I was young and listened to it and...
Well, to each their own, though.
Yeah.
Because I know those albums aren't exactly unpopular among people. It's just, it's not my cup of tea. And I'm not just saying that because they're British.
Nice tie-in there. Yeah. But one thing we had talked about previously was the fact that a lot of the kind of the stuff around Revolver and Rubber Soul, the first time I heard a lot of that was on the Beatles cartoons because I didn't have those records. Mm-hmm. Hold on. I want to ask. Go ahead.
Talking about those Beatle cartoons, what year or kind of around what time did you really start getting into the Beatles with those cartoons? Like how were they being broadcast at that point? Because the show probably wasn't still on.
No, we had a satellite dish, and when I say satellite dish, this was probably 1985, 1986, and it wasn't a small dish like we have now with the dish networks or whatever, DirecTV. This was a gigantic dish that was on the side of our house, that was mounted into cement block. Oh. And there were two controls. One controlled the direction that the satellite moved in. So you'd press the button on the control and the whole satellite dish would move. And then another button controlled awesome. Which station, when it was facing that satellite, which one of the stations. So I was able to do things like Nickelodeon in the United States. Nickelodeon was shown, had an East Coast feed and a West Coast feed. Mm-hmm. And they would have call-in
giveaways?
Things where, like giveaways. So I would watch the East Coast feed. I would get the phone number. I would figure out whatever the question was and whatever the answer was. And then 3 hours later, I would go to the West Coast feed. I would queue up everything that needed to be queued up seconds before I needed to do it. And I would be Johnny on the spot, and I would get it, and I would be able to get in and get the T-shirt or answer the question or whatever it was.
Sly dog you.
Yeah. Oh, I was learning how to be a pirate when I was 10 years old. It was great. So that's how I watched it. I probably watched it on one of those satellite stations, whatever it was. And, yeah, it was like 85, 86, 87 when I watched them.
I didn't even know those cartoons were still on then.
Yeah, they were on different places. I assume, if I'm going to make an assumption, without really knowing,
Fans on the Run is the show of unbased assumptions.
Okay, great. I would say that probably after the Monkees aired in 86, and then they were, or 85, 86, they were on Nickelodeon, which was where I saw them. After that, there were probably different places trying to capitalize on nostalgia. So it was probably shown on some station at that time, and I probably glommed onto it then. And since I didn't have the records, like, tell me what you see. I'm like, I've never heard of this Beatles song. This isn't a Beatles song. It wasn't on Sgt. Pepper. So...
And you wouldn't know if it was on Meet the Beatles, because you gave that away.
Oh, it hurts my heart. But anyway, that's how I learned a lot of that stuff.
Charlie, if it makes you feel better, if we ever meet in person, I will give you a copy of Meet the Beatles.
No, thank you. I got to a point where I said, well, why do I have all this vinyl stuff? The CDs are pristine condition, a pristine sound. Like, why would I want to hear it in vinyl sound? But now, like, I probably thought that way 15 years ago, and now I'm going back and rebuying vinyl. We bought the Vince Guaraldi Charlie Brown Christmas record, and we bought the Beatlemania album that Mitch is on, and Beatle records and Monkees records. I'm just, buying those up again. And I don't know why the quality, I could just say, hey, Alexa, play Monkees, and get amazing sound quality, but there's something about the vinyl that we all
I think you just screwed over some of our listeners who may be listening to this without headphones, whose, like, echoes went off, like, playing Sgt. Pepper on Amazon Music.
I don't know if you'll want to cut this out or not, but
it's staying in.
When the OK Google thing started happening and people, my buddy got OK Google on his watch or on his phone.
Yeah.
I just kept going, OK Google, and just trying to get him in trouble. I don't know if he ever got in trouble or not, but I thought it was funny.
Actually, you know what?
I am going to cut this.
I'm just doing that so I can see in the waveform where I should cut it.
That's
okay. I'm leaving this part in.
There.
I'm leaving this part in. I may just bleep out what you said.
That's
yeah.
funny.
I'll just do that.
So, what's the next Beatles question? Let's talk Beatles.
Yeah, let's not talk what you just said.
Could you imagine how mad the other guy would get if you mentioned that on his show?
Oh, sweet Jesus.
I have to edit for 3 hours.
Yeah. I just gave it away who we're talking about.
Oh, that's all right. We'll love him.
Plug him
I love
at
him.
the end. We'll plug him at the end.
Definitely.
So, I want to ask, kind of broad question. What do the Beatles mean to you?
What do the Beatles mean to me?
See, you also just screwed me up for the rest of the show. Because now I don't...
You're thinking about that also?
Yeah.
That's great.
Jesus
what do the Beatles mean? The Beatles mean being talented at the right place at the right time and everything just working out. Because, I mean, we all love them, and they were crazy talented, but they were at the right place at the right time with the right sound, doing the right things, and it was a bunch of kids who just shot to a level of stardom that, we say had never been seen, and it's pretty much true. You had Sinatra with the Bobby Soxers, you had Elvis,
yeah,
but this was something completely different. And it wasn't until years later for me that I realized that pretty much from 66 on, they kind of pooped all over what made them popular. And I have a real bad, one of the things, one of my pet peeves is groups who poop on what made them popular. It's like Kiss not doing Rock and Roll All Night, or Jimmy Buffett not doing Margaritaville, or Barenaked Ladies not doing If I Had $1 Million, or in interviews crapping all over that. And later on, when I heard these interviews and I heard John say, oh, well, I'm glad you liked the Mop Tops, love, and I'm glad you liked a hard day's night, but that's the past. Well, that might be true, but it's what got you to where you were.
Yeah.
You don't have to poop on it. It's a part of the whole package. So
I think that quote you're talking about came in from like the bed-in.
Yes.
Where he had gotten in an argument with some reporter.
Yeah.
Which that was in John's self-destructive period in the late 60s, where he was doing pretty much anything to wind up in the British tabloids.
Let me say here, and this is going to be blasphemy to all your Beatle fans, but I'm
nothing
say
could be
anyway.
more blasphemous than some of the things I've said in previous episodes. So you're safe.
John was extremely talented, and I respect him for his talent. But everything that I've read about the man and everything I've learned about him, I don't respect him as a human being. Not from the beginning when he was in Liverpool on top of buildings peeing on the nuns that walked by, and basically getting into lots. And I get that the guy had a tough childhood. I get it. People like to give him a lot of credit for what happened with the war and his anti-war stance. I get that too. When I think about what happened with Julian and his romps with Harry Nilsson and getting kicked out of the Smothers Brothers show and
that incident at the Troubadour.
Yeah, I just don't respect the guy. I don't think I would be friends with him. I don't think I would like him at all, but I respect him completely as a singer and songwriter. He's extremely talented, and some people have a tough time breaking those kinds of things apart. But I tried hard to say he was absolutely talented and he was a crappy person.
Well, something that kind of bothers me when people bring up the whole, John physically abusive with Cynthia thing, and while I think Cynthia said he only did it like once, that's still like one too many times for it to happen, and it kind of really disgusts me when I see people try and shrug that off in this Beatle world. It's like, no, the guy's not it. The guy was very psychologically damaged, but that's not an excuse for not being a good person.
He was a very flawed individual, and what I find, on a more general note, is that the people who tend to scream peace and love at the top of their lungs, if you look at the way they live their life, it's the antithesis of the way they live. Now, I'm not saying that about Ringo or Paul or anybody else, but John certainly had extreme demons and led and told everybody peace and love, but then he didn't really live his life that way, I don't think. And I don't mean to bring the show down. I'm a huge Beatles fan.
Yeah.
Everybody out there, I'm a gigantic
No, you're allowed to
Beatles
be a fan of the music while being able to criticize them for what they did wrong.
Yeah. So that's just the way I'm glad that you're accepting of that opinion. It's not an opinion that I talk about a lot, because a lot of Beatles fans, they are with them like I am with NRBQ, in that they can do no wrong.
Yeah.
And I think looking back, I think they did quite a bit of wrong, but sometimes it wasn't their fault, sometimes it was. Anyway, the question was, what do the Beatles mean to me? And I think that the answer is they were they were at the right place at the right time with the right talent, and it's just so joyful to see a lot of how their career went. And I think it's something that we all wish and aspire to. I know I certainly always wanted to be in a band where I felt that camaraderie. I was never a solo guy.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be in a band and have...
We all want to be the Beatles in the movie Help, living in that house with the 4 doors, but it's all one room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'll bring the mood up a little, because you play in tribute groups, and you play the bass. So, I if you've listened to the show, I like talking gear. Mm-hmm. If you could have, if you don't already have them, one Beatle instrument what would you, wish into existence if you could have it?
Ooh.
I'll go first. I've said this before. If I could have that Rickenbacker 325 C63 or whatever,
Sure.
that is such a beautiful instrument. It's a bit of a bitch to play with the weird spacing at the nut, but, I had always kind of been like, I can't justify spending that much money on a guitar. It's ridiculous. They're not even that good. And then I went to the Chicago Music Exchange, and I actually played a Rickenbacker 360 C64, and I was just in awe. It's like, holy shit, this is a nice thing.
Well...
And then you hit that Hard Day's Night chord, and,
And it just sounds right.
Yeah. All is right in the world.
So, a few of them come to mind, so I've got to try and rank these here. So I think the first thing any of the bass players would probably say is the Höfner cavern bass. That's kind of the one. Like, I don't have a cavern bass. I have a German lefty and which is a reissue, and then I have a 66 righty. But the cavern bass, but I think the Rickenbacker would be really...
Well, actually, you say the cavern bass. I want to ask you a bit more specifically, which incarnation of the cavern bass? Because there was the first one, and then he had it, repainted, and then he had that pickup cover or surround thing. You could see it in the Revolution video.
Yeah, that he had done later on. And yeah, you see it in the Revolution, and then in the Let It Be movie.
Yeah.
No... More like how it was. All right, let's be specific. More like how the bass was in the Some Other Guy video that they recorded in the cavern. I think that would be a neat bass. But the Rickenbacker, I have a. Am I allowed to say this? Maybe I'm not allowed to say this. I have a Chinese copy.
Oh, you're allowed to say it. I feel no shame.
I have a $291 copy of the Lefty Rickenbacker Magical Mystery Tour paint job bass, and it is.
If Rickenbacker didn't want people to get copies, then don't exclusively sell $4,000 instruments.
Right.
You're just inviting it at that point.
The one that I have is an absolute hog. It's terrible. It was the real Rickenbacker is a neck through bass. The one I got was a set neck, and the set neck let loose, so we had to bolt it on. So now it's a bolt-on neck. It does the job for, if we're going to do a theater show, we play it maybe 5 songs, I don't spend too much time on it. So, if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck and sounds like a duck, and this, it does okay, but I quickly switch back to the Höfner.
Yeah.
But then again, I've never played a J160E that played as well as the Gibson J45s. The J45s are just beautiful instruments. The best acoustic guitar I've ever played was a J45.
Well, so I've always found the J160Es, and I own the Epiphone equivalent, which I look behind me.
Do you like it? Do you like it?
I like it for what it is, which it's a fairly mediocre acoustic. I'll be honest.
I was told to steer clear, and I was thinking about getting one.
It sounds fairly thin.
Does it?
Yeah, but if you want to play "I Feel Fine" or those early Beatle tracks, you need that guitar.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree, and I have a Casino. I had a few fake Ricks. You have a
Casino. Do you have a gambling license then?
Actually, we play on a Casino cruise. We'll talk about that in a little while. But no, the Epiphone. I got one of the ones that's made in the Korean factory. So it's not one of the Chinese ones. It's one of the Peerless factory.
Yeah.
And those are the nicer ones. I got real lucky and got it for like $350 or something.
Oh, there's the Chinese ones, then you have the Korean ones, then you have, I think, the Japanese ones, because I think some of them are made in Japan. And then, if you're Mr. Moneybags, you can get the elitist made in the USA. I think they're making them again in the US, like at the Gibson factory or whatever. They just announced them like last year.
Wow. Well, I didn't hear about that, but I'm a gearhead up to a certain point. You know, certainly there are people who get way further into it than I do. I didn't even like Höfner before I was in a Beatle band, because every Höfner I played had been just a hog. They were just hard to play, and I didn't like them. And then when I started doing this, and I played the Ignition bass, and I was like, and then I played a contemporary, and so I bought the contemporary, and like 3 months later I bought a German, because I was like, okay, these are actually pretty decent.
Well, I own the Icon Ignition, or whatever the hell it's called.
Yeah, I was confused. I might have used the British term rather than the American one.
I don't even know what it is. Like the one you can get now, like made in China or wherever it's made. But then I also, at the aforementioned Chicago Music Exchange, I got to play, a real German Höfner. And I was like, I wasn't expecting there to be that much of a difference, but oh my god.
Yeah, the German Höfners are very handcrafted, quality-made instruments, and when it's set up properly, when it's really set up properly and done nice, they feel real good and they sound great. I've grown, my appreciation for them has grown since I've been doing the Beatle tribute thing.
Speaking of that Beatle tribute thing, how did you enter this world of Beatle tribute things? So
let me start off by saying that I don't even feel like I sound like myself, much less sound like a Beatle. It's kind of like Elvis Costello trying to do McCartney.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I used to go watch the British Invasion at Epcot, and we had year-round passes just to go buy yards of beer and sit in front and listen to the band. On days off, my wife and I used to go sit and listen, because at the time, they didn't just do Beatles. They did very little Beatles. They did Herman's Hermits, Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Hollies, the Seekers.
The Hollies is one that you don't often see, people do imitations or covers of. How well did they do the Hollies? Because it's hard to get the harmonies.
Let me tell you. So the lineup...
this is going to be blasphemy. This will even out what you said earlier. I think the Hollies had better harmonies than the Beatles.
And yeah, they certainly had tougher harmonies to figure out. When I used to go see them at Disney, it was Jimmy Pappas on drums, who's now the Lennon in our group, and he also switches off and does Ringo whenever we need him to do, but multi-talented guy. Sean Bryant was rhythm guitar and vocal. Tommy Galvin was lead guitar and vocal, and Alan LaBeouf from Broadway, from Beatlemania, was playing bass. And Alan had this tremendously strong high vocal, so they would do Just One Look.
Oh, wow.
And he would hit that bridge. I thought I was dreaming, but I was wrong, and just hit it so strong. And I was like, oh man, listen to this guy. He's freaking unbelievable. And we went often enough that it got to the point where they would go on break, and Alan would come down and always talk to Brandy and I. And he came over and saw the Redcoats, which was it wasn't a Beatle lookalike band, but it was like, the Redcoats were like, imagine if The Who played Beatles music.
Okay.
And the drummer was a Keith Moonhead and did it well. And the guitar player was like a Townsend. And I learned this late. I said to him one time, I said, I hope you don't take this the wrong way. I said, but you play Beatles, but you've got an Ace Frehley quality about you. And he's like, I love Ace Frehley. So he was like a Kiss head too. And Alan came down and saw us play. And one time actually asked me if I was interested in doing some sub work at Epcot on bass. And I said, no. What a jerk I was. I said, no, I'm in this band. I don't need to play over there, but I'll come see you guys. And they were great. They were great guys and great players. And yeah, it was a few years later that they needed somebody to fill in, I think, in the John spot, and they just went, Charlie, you want to do it? Because this is, Ethan, this is how my career has gone. It gets to, we need somebody to do this stupid thing that nobody will do. Let's call Charlie. And I do it, and I just go do it. So I said, well, if my attitude is, if you're stupid enough to hire me, then I'll be stupid enough to go do it. So I went and did John, and then they asked me to do Ringo. So I went and did Ringo at the park for a few days, like 3 days, and got to play drums, and that was a lot of fun. And I met lots of other guys who were doing it at that time, like Leo Rojo, who's now our George, plays George in BeatleBeat. Brian Wilson, where Brian was not the Brian Wilson, but the Brian Wilson. Brian was the John at Epcot.
He's not the Brian Wilson who's lying in bed, just like himself.
Brian is a great guy and a fantastic Lennon, who's now doing horror. He does like lower budget horror movies he's in, but he was the John at Epcot for roughly 10 years and just did he's funny as hell. He really nailed the humor of the character, of the John character, the stage humor. And I got to go do that, and it was a blast. What the hell was the question?
The
Beatles.
I'm trying to remember. It's how'd you get into that whole world?
Oh, yeah. So
you did answer the question.
They asked me to do it, and I just went and did it. But I never thought, I never was comfortable doing a character like that. But I love the music, and I was able to play it, and a lot of I'm not bragging. I was able to do it as well or better than a lot of the guys that they would have to ask if I didn't do it. So I think they wanted me to do it because they liked hanging out with me, which is always cool. You always want a good hang. Mm-hmm. And I was able to perform competently. And sometimes that's the most important part, is just to have somebody on stage with you who's competent and they know what not to do as much as what to do. And then I did George at somebody's wedding in Georgia, with BeatleBeat. The funny thing was,
George in Georgia.
Actually, I never thought of that. I went up to Atlanta and I played bass backing a Michael Jackson tribute show, and then drove across the state to I forget where it was, but then we played a wedding there and I did the George spot. That was the only time I did George, and after that I started doing the Paul spot. And that's where I've done that since, I think, about 2014. I've been doing the Paul spot.
So, you mentioned you did Ringo.
I did.
So you play drums too.
I again, competent. I could never do the shuffles like Ringo does the shuffles. Yeah. And even a lot of the Ringos can't do the shuffles like Ringo does the shuffles. But I knew what I could do and what I couldn't do, and when to, open up the hi-hat and really fake my way through it. And I could keep a pretty consistent beat. And I wasn't a total Ringo on set. I brought a little Keith Moon to it and had a little bit of wackiness.
By that you mean you destroyed whatever drum kit you were playing, right?
Yeah, I mean, Ringo never did the
you send a cymbal slicing into George or whoever it is.
That's it. I just had fun with it. I think it's important to play the music right, but none of us are going to be the Beatles. And some of the bands it's war going out there, one band versus another. I have no qualms with any of the other bands who do Beatles music, and I want to have fun. I put on a wig. I haven't had hair since I was 26 years old. I've been pretty well bald since then. So I get to put on a wig.
Wait,
I get to
bald?
put on a sergeant. Yeah. Can the listeners see the light reflecting off of the
The listeners can't see you, period.
But it's supposed to be a good time, and I had fun with it. So yeah, I did Ringo. There's some video of me doing Ringo, singing Boys, and I think playing one of the other songs. I forget which other one. It might have been.
You sent that to me, I think. It was at like a launch for Beatles Rock Band.
It was. Yep, 999. It was the launch of the video game, and it wouldn't be years later till I actually played the game. But it was fun. I did it there. We used to play a nudist resort here in Orlando. We kept our clothes on, but it was a...
Oh, a nudist.
Yes,
I thought,
yes.
like, I thought you said, like, a nudist, like some sort of, like, Greek name or something. And I'm like,
No, an actual
nudist resort.
There's a pretty famous nudist resort out in Kissimmee that we used to play all the time.
What's the name? I feel like I might...
Cypress Cove is the name of the place.
Okay.
And I played there for years with my band, fully clothed all the time. But they were real nice people, and they just wanted a good band, and it was a blast. We did the Beatles there a number of times. I played drums there. So I played all the spots, and like I said, it's not a bragging thing.
It may get weird if you're doing the drums, not fully clothed, because those those drum thrones can get a little, they can get a little sticky, because leather, especially in Florida where it's hot.
It's hot year round, yeah. Paradise. This is paradise.
Well, to me, this is a very base level observation here. When I think of the Florida weather, I think of that one time in like last year in February where I came, and I'm trying to think, what would it be in Fahrenheit? It's like minus 20 Celsius here, like 20 below freezing, and I got off the plane in Florida and it was like 90 degrees. And I almost fainted in like the parking lot of Target or whatever.
I always say I can't believe people voluntarily live under the conditions they live in. And, I have somebody who scrapes the snow out of my driveway. Really? I've never had to scrape sunshine off of my driveway. I was born on Long Island, but I'm a Florida boy.
Well, I could never live in some place that has the same temperature year round.
Well, it's cold out there now. It's like 70 degrees. Well, I don't know what that is, and
70 degrees is like 15 or 20, and that feels almost insulting that you're calling it cold. Because you said you're from Long Island.
Yeah,
you know what cold is like.
I was 5 when we left, and I wouldn't move back. We moved from where we are. We moved up to North Carolina for a year. 3/4 of the year, we had to wear a sweater, and then it snowed, and we moved right back to Florida. No way. I'm happy where I am, and
see,
that's
my
it.
favorite. I get headaches. Like, I get migraines when it's hot.
Oh, really?
I get migraines when it's bright. So maybe that's why winter is my favorite season, because it's dark and it's cold.
Sunglasses, and it just feels good. But to each his own. That's why everybody doesn't live in Florida. But I love it here. I love it, love it, love it.
We save that job for the Floridians.
What's the next Beatles question?
Actually, now that we're talking about Florida, I want to ask you, as someone who's lived in Florida, what's the most, the whole Florida man thing?
Oh, yeah.
The most Florida man thing I think I encountered while I was in Florida was I was at the store Rock and Roll Heaven in Orlando.
I was just there recently. Just bought a few records from there.
And, I was shopping there, and the guy all of a sudden turned off the music and started tuning into the news, because it's like, oh yeah, there's someone we know on trial because, like, they killed a stripper and her kids, and that was such a weird juxtaposition from, like, playing, like, Herman's Hermits or something, and switching to a murder trial.
Well, speaking of murder trials, so one night.
Oh, I'm scared to see how this segue goes.
I decided to take my wife and go see my buddy Bubba Whoop-Ass Wilson, who's a musician and radio personality here in Central Florida. And he was playing in a bar in Sanford. So Brandy and I it was a Sunday afternoon, and we're driving down 1792, and we pass the courthouse, and the place is mobbed, right? Mobbed. Trucks, trailers, satellites, and we're like, oh, what's going on? I wonder what's going on. Oh, well. So we get down to the bar, and we're sitting in the bar, and we look up at the screen, and it was the Trayvon Martin case.
Oh.
And it was the verdict was being read.
Oh, shit.
And it was on a Sunday, and Bubba stopped playing, they turned on the TVs, they read the verdict, and when they found not guilty, I looked at my wife and I'm like, we need to get home right now because I have no idea what's going to happen. So we got in the car and just flew home. Luckily, there were no, riots or anything like that, but I just didn't know what to expect. And we were literally right down the street from the courthouse when they read that verdict. It was, there's so much stuff that happens in Florida that's, it is hot here, and maybe that melts the brains a little bit. And I don't
based on my experience, as the further you drive out of the Orlando metropolitan area, the more it's kind of just alligators and meth.
I grew up in Vero Beach, Florida, which is on the coast south of Cocoa Beach and Sebastian. And growing up, there were a lot of Confederate flags. There was a lot of big trucks that would go out mudding. It was very redneck. Very, very redneck. And I don't mean that. A lot of people would say that disparagingly. I'm not saying that disparagingly. I knew a lot of these people. I grew up with them. They were not bad people. They lived a lifestyle that was different, especially for me coming from Long Island, and I had a thick Long Island accent. What are you guys doing? I was like, it was different. When I moved to Orlando, it was more city, and a lot of that went away. It's not like that. But when I go back, you start to hear the boom cars. A lot of that stuff that I grew up with is still out there and prevalent, but I don't see it here in Orlando. Like, you went to Rock and Roll Heaven. Yeah. That's 6 miles from my house. And that is Winter Park. And Winter Park is a completely different world than even what's outside of, in the rest of Orlando. So, there's a lot of different personalities in Florida, but one of them is definitely the Florida man, and it gets wacky. I think there was one where there was a zombie thing where one guy was eating another guy on the side of the road, literally eating somebody's face or something.
On bath salts or something?
He had eaten some kind of drug that just made him decide to eat somebody's face off.
As one does.
It's weird. And yes, there's alligators. We used to see alligators in the water when we would go by the ditches in Vero. You would see alligators in the ditches. So it's Florida. I guess it has those things, but mostly it was wonderful growing up here.
Well, I want to ask you something now. I kind of call these, even though they're not what it says on the tin, I call them quick fire questions.
Okay.
Which the answers are never quick, but it's always our favorite part of, fine, I'll say his name, Plastic EP. We do his shows about albums, and lately, as of recording, we've been doing the Beatles, and we just did Revolver a couple of days ago, and it got heated.
It didn't get too heated.
It didn't get too heated. You said nice things after I made you disappear.
What we're referencing is Tomorrow Never Knows.
Yes.
And
we'll get there.
Okay,
I want to ask you, what is your favorite Beatles song? And I know the answer, but you can preach to the listeners as to why you think this is the best Beatles song.
I think Tell Me Why is the best Beatles song, and here's why. I'll try and make it quick. It has all the
You don't have to
elements.
make it quick. You can ramble on for as long as you want.
I seem to ramble on a lot, and I don't mean to do that. It has all the elements that we love about the Beatles. It's got 3-part harmony. It's got the falsetto. It's got the jangly guitars. It's got the signature drum fills. It's got the hardest drum fill in any Beatles song there is.
It's really hard.
Yeah. I don't know if you would say those are triplets or sextuplets.
I don't know.
At the end of the bridge, but incredibly difficult. No, but I'm talking about when it goes.
Oh, yeah.
He's doing that too. It's not. He's alternate hands. It's
Yeah.
It's two hands at the same time. Triplet.
See, I even have a hard time in like I Want to Hold Your Hand when he does like ba-da-da-da-da-da on like the snare and the toms at the same time.
So it's got everything, and it's 2 minutes and 17 seconds, and it's just brilliant. To me, it's just brilliance, all packaged up. Now, I get that other people have lots of other songs. And Your Bird Can Sing is fantastic. I tend to gravitate towards the songs where they play together. One that I think people would kind of scrunch their face up is Hold Me Tight. Hold Me Tight is a fantastic.
Why would people scrunch their face at that? That's a good song.
It is, but they might say, well, it's not one of the top Beatles songs, or it shouldn't be one of the best Beatles songs.
I mean,
but for me,
if you look at it as kind of like, the better half and the lesser half, it's in the better half of the Beatles catalog.
Yeah. So but tell me why I think is the best. Now, you and Kit both were saying Tomorrow Never Knows.
Yeah. I'm also saying that because everyone I know who's like a big Beatle fan growing up, like my mom and my uncle, their favorite Beatles song is Tomorrow Never Knows.
Well, when
and
Kit
my mom's
said
not even like a huge Beatles fan. Like her favorite, or like her second favorite is, In My Life, but her first favorite is Tomorrow Never Knows.
Well, Kit is such a sweet human being that I was ribbing her. I was trying to get her goat. So when she said that was her favorite one, it probably didn't matter what song she would have picked. I would have said, oh, that's nobody's favorite Beatles song.
Yeah.
But she said Tomorrow Never Knows, and I said, oh, that's nobody's favorite Beatles song. And then you were like, what? Yes, it is. And you guys got all amped up about it, which just tickled me. Yeah. So it's a great piece of artwork for the studio. Would I say it's one of the best Beatles songs? Probably not, but it's okay. We all have our opinions, and I think it's fun to argue about these things.
Now, this is where it's more fun saying what you don't like than it is saying what you do like. What is your least favorite Beatles song? And don't you dare cop out and say you don't have one.
Oh, no.
Okay, good.
I'm just trying to think about...
Because I once got, feedback from a listener saying, like, I've noticed some of your guests weasel out of that question.
No. I'm not fond of the White Album as a whole. I've said recently that I think the White Album could have been pared down to make a really good 45.
If you just have the George songs.
Yeah, just most of it doesn't appeal to me. But I think if I had to list the song that I cringe every time I hear, it's When I Get Home. And that's funny because it's from what I think is my favorite Beatles album, which is A Hard Day's Night. But When I Get Home has two things about it that really bug me. It's the only one that I can think of that has a cliche. I'm gonna love her till the cows come home.
Yeah.
That's just, for the Beatles, for anybody else that might be good, for the Beatles that's just weak. It's just weak sauce. It's, writing in cliche, I can't think of any other time in their songwriting that they did that. And also, the end of the, is it the end of the choruses? Yeah, the end of the choruses and the end of the verses too just feel like they drop off before the beginning of the next one comes in. It feels like something that should have hit the floor and not been picked back up for me.
Yeah, it's like that got included on a Beatles album, but Leave My Kitten Alone didn't.
Yeah, and some of the stuff that came after it.
Like That Means a
course.
Lot.
Yeah, that would have been a great one.
That would have fit in quite well on the Help album.
Yep.
As opposed to some of those songs that sound like they were written in 4 minutes.
Now, with that being said, the chorus for When I Get Home, the chord that they sing, whoa, whoa, is really cool. So there's good elements to it, but it's just, when I hear it, I cringe. It's my cringy Beatles song.
Now, you've kind of said both of these, but I'd like you to elaborate a little. What's your favorite Beatle album?
Hard Day's Night. I think A Hard Day's Night, and I would say that's always number one, and the number 2 spot is pretty much everything gets cycled through it except for the White Album. That's never been a favorite of mine.
So you're one of the good ones who actually likes Beatles for Sale.
Yeah.
So I don't have to defend Beatles for Sale here.
I go through phases. Like we talked about that when we did the Plastic Show.
Who?
It has a lot of covers. It has a lot of covers on it, which I think they didn't need to do, but they probably had to put it out quick or whatever, and it was just easy to record those songs, or, and they're great versions. Who can argue with rock and roll music?
Well, I don't even get why people are so mad that it's mostly covers, because when you look at it, it's not even that they're like new covers. They're covers that the Beatles had been doing in their stage show for years, that they'd been doing since Hamburg, and a lot of them they had even done on like the BBC stuff. Like they had already played it live,
If I had to, like you mentioned, That Means a Lot. I think they had a few songs in their back pocket like that they were probably either working on or developing that they could have used instead of all those covers. With that being said, the covers that they did were awesome, so it's a good album. I mentioned my brother Tony earlier. I have 3 older brothers, and 2 of them were Beatles fans, my brother Artie and my brother Tony. And I think a lot of my music, we learn things from other people. And I learned a lot from them. They're much older than me, 11 years older and 17 years older than me. But I remember my brother Tony saying that A Hard Day's Night was as good or better than any other band's best of album. And when I really sat and thought about that, I was like, it's true. I mean,
so you think like A Hard Day's Night is better than, say, I'm trying to think of a best of album, like Stones' Hot Rocks.
For me, yeah. Better than the Eagles' Greatest Hits, which was obviously a great selling album. Just A Hard Day's Night, If I Fell, and I Love Her.
Should have known better.
Should have known better. Tell me why.
You can't do
run
that
after freaking home run. It's just it. I love I love most of the other albums, but that one for me is top notch, right on top. And I have a feeling the next question is, what's my least favorite album?
Sure. You already answered. You already asked it for me.
The White Album is, for me, it's the album that non-Beatle fans seem to love. Oh, I don't like the Beatles, but I really love the 70s White Album. And I'm always like, the Beatles, it wasn't the 70s, and it's the most terrible album. It's not, I don't know how to describe it. It's got moments of greatness on it. It does.
Well, what's your favorite song on the White Album? Just so we kind of know where you're approaching it from. Like, what is the moment on the White Album that you're like, oh, this is great? Like, if the rest of the album could be as good as this, then, because everyone else thinks of it differently.
I think a lot of people would gravitate towards something like Dear Prudence, and I don't. I would say Mother Nature's Son was a good McCartney track. I would say I didn't dislike Birthday. I didn't dislike Back in the USSR. But
I've never been that crazy about any of the songs you just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, some people like, what do you like, Glass Onion?
My favorite track on the album right now is actually Piggies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Some people
Piggies, Savoy Truffle. What's another one?
That's pretty
Your
cool.
Blues.
Savoy Truffle. Oh, Your Blues. I could totally
Everybody's
pass
got
on
something to hide except for me and my monkey.
I could totally pass on that. I have no idea how Bungalow Bill ever made it on the record. It's just not anything that I find no joy in it, whereas I find joy in a lot of the other albums. Now let me ask you this: which do you prefer, Let It Be or Let It Be Naked?
I dislike Let It Be, and I dislike Let It Be Naked even more.
Really?
Yeah, because I picked the secret third answer. Out of the, I don't like the Let It Be album as a whole. I don't like it very much. I have to look at it from the perspective of someone said on the show, from Scott Erickson. He said, yeah, I think it was him. You have to look at it as like the soundtrack to the Let It Be movie. You don't look at it as a Beatle album. That being said, it is an incredibly weak Beatles album. But if I have to listen to it, I'll probably listen to like the Glyn Johns mix, the Get Back album.
Oh, okay.
Because some of the stuff I think benefits from the Phil Spector treatment.
See, and I
like I Me Mine sounds naked, and not in a good way on Let It Be Naked.
Right. I tend to,
which that's my favorite track on the album.
I tend to like live albums. I'm very big into. I really enjoy live. A lot of the bands that I like, I gravitate towards their live albums even more so than their studio stuff. And Let It Be, especially Let It Be Naked, seems like almost like a live album to me. And the movie accentuates that because you see them playing it. So I really like that album. I enjoy it.
It's the running joke on this show that I say there are secret correct answers to the questions that the people don't know the answers to until they say what they think.
Right.
Like, to me, I've always said, like, the correct answer to favorite Beatle album is Revolver. Secret favorite or secret least favorite Beatle album is Let It Be.
Nah.
Or Please,
White Album is
or
definitely
Please
lower
Please
than,
Me.
you don't like Please Please Me?
Well, I'm going off of kind of statistics from this show, what people say, and I can't
really?
say I
People
disagree.
don't like Please Please Me?
It's like the second least favorite to like Yellow Submarine and Let It Be.
See, I don't understand that.
Where I rarely let guests say Yellow Submarine because that's just a cop-out answer.
I have a Yellow Submarine has All Too Much, which was
that's
really cool.
That
really
may be
cool
my
track.
favorite Beatles song.
Oh, really?
It's All Too Much.
It's a great one.
Because it's the Beatles' take on the whole, psychedelic freakout thing of '67, and they wear it pretty well.
Yeah. I have a love-hate relationship with Magical Mystery Tour. Sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, this is so great. And I listen to it over and over, and then I'm like, oh, I just can't listen to this.
I think some of the songs, I feel conflicted because I really like Magical Mystery Tour, but I really don't like Fool on the Hill. And I'm not a big fan of, like, Your Mother Should Know.
Oh, see, I like that one.
See, no, I like Flying. I love Blue Jay Way. I love the title track. Yeah, I'm kind of getting back into Walrus.
I know what you're saying about Fool on the Hill. I don't always. Walrus is one of those where everybody loves it, and I'm like,
I prefer Piggy in the Middle.
You just took it right out of my brain. I sometimes what spins off of something is better than the source material.
Do you want to hear something that'll... I don't know how you'll feel about this. I think the best song off of the Hard Day's Night album is I Must Be in Love, and it's not on the Hard Day's Night album.
I can understand that.
It is everything I love about that album wrapped up into one song and done like 10 times better.
when I was a kid, and I'm thinking probably 12 years old, I would go thrift shopping with my mom on Saturday mornings. And this was back when you'd go to a thrift store and they just had this incredible bin of vinyl to go through. So I went through it once and I found this album that had what seemed like Sgt. Pepper, Let It Be, all of these albums. And Sgt. Pepper, Magical Mystery Tour, Let It Be, and I forget what the other one was.
With the Beatles.
Yeah, and I'm like, look at this Beatles album, I gotta buy it. So I bought it and I brought it home, and before I got to listen to it, my dad's like, that's not the Beatles. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course it's I was 12.
Yeah.
I'm like, of course it's the Beatles. And I didn't look at it close enough. And he's like, no, that's the Ruddles. And I thought he was pulling my leg, and then I put it on, but I fell in love with the album. I didn't even know there was a movie. Had no idea until years later that there was a movie. I fell in love with the record and that music. And still to this day, I'm just a gigantic... I would much rather play in a Ruddles tribute band than a Beatles tribute band if there was a way to make money off of it.
I enjoyed listening to, like, Good Times Roll more than Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds on most days. Same with Double Back Alley.
Oh, yeah.
It's Looking Good is probably the best song off of Rubber Soul.
I like the way you put those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, is better than Love You Too and Within You Without You combined.
Innes did Neil Innes rest in peace, did a fantastic job, and that's...
Well, how do you feel about... you mentioned Neil Innes. How do you feel about the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band?
I love the Gorilla album.
Oh my!
Love that album. I can listen to it and just start just right now thinking about
that's probably one of the best purchases I made during the quarantine lockdown. I got an original British mono pressing of Gorilla.
Oh wow!
On the nice British Liberty Records label.
Eric Clapton on ukulele.
Yeah.
Hi, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved Bonzo Dog Band. Funny, great stuff.
Hi, nice to be with you.
But I didn't get, you know what? I didn't get too much into the other albums, Bonzo albums, other than Gorilla.
Some of them are, Donut and, or I'm trying to remember the actual name of the album. I think it's like Donut and Granny's Greenhouse or something like that. It's got some good stuff on it.
Yeah.
The Tadpoles album's got Urban Spaceman.
The Monty Python is the same way, where like I like a lot of the Monty Python stuff, but then but I never got deep into it like some people get real deep into Monty Python. They could quote every line.
When it comes to Monty Python, I like the TV show better than I like the movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of, Holy Grail, but, I can quote you some, Flying Circus sketches verbatim.
See, I can't. I can quote Holy Grail enough that, if there's a nerd around me, their ears will perk up.
Yeah.
But not enough where I could really hang. A lot of this stuff, I can't really hang with the people who are way deep in. But I can give them the nod that, hey, I respect your world, and that's about it. That's how it is with Python.
You just said something that hit really close to home. That's kind of how I try and be.
Yeah.
I can't get very I don't necessarily feel comfortable a lot of the time with these people in these in-depth worlds, but I try and know enough that they'd okay, he's cool. He can stay.
Well, I got to tell you, when you first did the, I first saw you on the quiz show, right? On Plastic's quiz show. Plastic will give another nod. I was like, I am not going on the show with this guy. No way.
This wasn't the show where I left because I was bored, right?
That was after.
Yeah. I think that was actually the first time we were in the same show.
Yep. Without blowing smoke, your knowledge depth on this stuff is very, very impressive. And I always learn something while you're talking about a lot of these things, especially about the vinyls and the different versions, because I just never got into that. That wasn't where I put my focus.
So my rambling about, like, the mono mix of this song on this pressing of Revolver... Damn it, now I just remembered something I should have mentioned in the Revolver episode. So, no. I'm not even going to say it, because anyone who's listening to this show probably knows about it. I was going to say, Tomorrow Never Knows, there's a different mix only on the original British pressings, but I digress.
There's the phrase.
Yeah, there's the magic phrase.
I get asked, and I think you would ask me one time, well, what do you prefer, the mono mix or the stereo mix? And I'm like, I've always listened to the stereo mixes because it's nice to turn off one side and listen to the music, the performance, and listen to the other side. I
can't do that. Like, it's really uncomfortable listening to those early 60s Beatles stereo mixes with headphones on. Because it's like, oh, God, this is awful. Like, everything's going on in one ear and then, like, some tambourine and the vocals in the other.
Yeah, I like that stuff.
It's okay, but just as long as you're not listening with headphones.
And they didn't expect those to be. No one's going to listen in stereo. Of course, everybody's going to listen in mono.
And now it's EMI's asking us to do a stereo mix. Why? Fine, we'll do it. We'll spend 3 hours and get it done.
I'll give you a little bit of homework here. Not homework, but if you want to check out something cool, one thing that we haven't talked about was the Buffett world that I've lived in for years and years.
Florida, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I didn't grow up around people. It's amazing how the Northeast of the United States has this gigantically strong Beatles, Monkees scene.
Yeah.
And down in Florida, it wasn't around at all. I didn't grow up with people. In fact, growing up in the 80s, mid-80s, listening to the Beatles, I got picked on because I listened to Beatles because they were listening to Michael Jackson and Phil Collins or whatever else, and then years and years later, some of those people who picked on me, I would see them wearing a John Lennon shirt, and I'm like, yeah, I listened to that in elementary school, you know what I mean? But Buffett's guitar player is Pete Mayer, and he did a album of Beatle covers.
Okay.
And Pete is an excellent musician, an excellent, very smooth, soothing voice, soothing guitar playing. I highly recommend checking out the album. And I forget what the album is actually called, but it's Pete Mayer's Beatles album. And he's got some stuff he did straightforward, and some stuff he went on a big tangent. But that might be somebody you might want to talk to, because I know he's a gigantic Beatles fan. Probably worked with him or worked, somewhere around Paul, I would assume, because I've seen Paul and Buffett, taking up the same areas at certain times.
See, I don't mean this as like an insult to any parrot heads or, Jimmy Buffett associates or what have you. I've never gotten it. I don't understand it. I went once, I think, to the Margaritaville restaurant, and that was about as far. I once stayed a weekend at a parrot head's house, and it felt, for lack of a better term, I say this in an endearing way because, it can feel like this at the Beatle fests, too. A little culty.
I was, and I don't want to spend too much time here talking about it. I worked on the Parrothead circuit for years and years because that's what was here in Florida.
Yeah.
And I played with a lot of bands who are like, you got Buffett up at the top level, but then there's this whole genre called trop rock, tropical rock. And I played with a lot of the bands on that circuit. And I'll say this. There's an album, there's the Yellow album by Buffett called Songs You Know by Heart. And it's Volcano and Fins and Pirate Looks of 40 and all the stuff that you probably roll your eyes and But I'll also say that, like a lot of stuff that has staying power, if you listen to some of those albums, there's some really cool songs in there. Peanut Butter Conspiracy is a really cool song. Jamaica Mistake is a really cool song that was...
You said Peanut Butter Conspiracy, and my ears perked up for a second as a fan of 60s psychedelic rock. Like, is he going to talk about the Peanut Butter Conspiracy? It's like, oh, wait, no, he's talking about a Jimmy Buffett song.
There's songs that I could point you to, like Schoolboy Heart. If you listen to Schoolboy Heart, you'd probably go, okay, I'm not a Buffett fan, but that's a pretty cool song.
Well, this'll probably turn off any Buffett people listening. I have Sirius XM. I manually switched off in the car stereo the Jimmy Buffett channel because it's right next to like the classic rock channel, and I found myself accidentally switching to it too often, and hearing the steel drums and all that shit just kind of made me queasy.
The steel drums, glad you brought that up. Buffett's steel drum player for the whole run has been Robert Greenwich.
Not the steel drums. I love the steel drums. I was going to say face.
Robert Greenwich was the steel drummer on Beautiful Boy by John Lennon. He is... I can understand you not liking the Buffett stuff. I really can. But I'm telling you, those musicians, I've been on stage with them and worked with them. They're freaking unbelievable.
I never dislike musicians.
Yeah,
I have the utmost respect no matter what genre, because like these people know what they're doing.
Yeah, there are a few musicians where I've played with them on stage when I'm playing bass, and they had such a controlling command of their instrument that they took control of my playing. And I had a drummer do that once, where his pocket was so amazing that I fell right into it, and it just made my job so easy. And Michael Utley on piano was that way. Michael Utley is a fantastic musician, and when we started playing the Club Trini music, which is an offshoot of it's some of the Buffett's musicians, and they play like more soca kind of island Caribbean stuff, really more deep, heavy stuff. When he started playing that on piano, I just fell right into his groove, and it was beautiful. Really good players. I can understand people not liking Buffett, and it's very the songs by heart is very touristy, but there's a world
just
underneath
like Kokomo.
There's a world underneath it that it is actually really cool, but I get it, because when you see Buffett and the volcano and the fins and all of that stuff, I get it. It's tiresome, and I worked on that circuit for, my first pro gig was with a band called the Land Sharks out of Florida, and it was a Buffett cover band, and actually became the house band at Margaritaville in Orlando. They were the first house band at Orlando's Margaritaville, and we did the whole Buffett show. And one time the leader of the band bought us tickets to go see Buffett in Tampa. So I sat and I watched 3 songs and I left, because I was like, he got so mad at me, and I'm like, it's like watching myself work. We play the same songs they do. We play the same arrangements the same way.
Would you walk out of like a McCartney show, though?
Probably not, but I came close when I saw him and we had nosebleed seats when I saw him in Tampa. And after I walked out of the show, I said, well, I don't need... I'm not a big fan of his new band. I'm sorry. I know everybody loves Abe on drums. He's a fantastic drummer, but he's not Blair Cunningham for me. No, Hamish isn't there.
Wicks is there.
Robbie, thank God he held on to Wicks, because Wicks was not at the 9/11 concert. Wicks was not on keyboards at the 9/11 concert, and I was afraid that Wicks was out of the band, but he wasn't. I love Wicks and what he brings to it. But the new band, they perform great. They perform wonderful. But I saw that band in '92, that '92 band, and just
on the New World tour,
Yep.
or whatever that was called.
They were playing stuff from Off the Ground, and I love that album.
Oh, I do
love
too.
that band. I love that. That was pinnacle for me. And I've seen them now, and it's like, I
was going to defend them, saying like, well, listen to like the new album, like the album New. But then I was going to, then I remembered all my favorite songs on that record. I looked at the personnel. It's just McCartney and like his producer playing the drums.
The Flowers in the Dirt album is just, for me, that's really, really top-notch stuff. I love that. I love his working with Elvis Costello.
And the Off the Ground album. That's...
Yeah.
I don't like talking about how much I paid for things, but that's probably one of the most expensive records I ever bought, and it was worth it. An original British pressing of Off the Ground. From that sad time in music when no one was making records anymore. To my knowledge, he's never played Golden Earth Girl live, and I've never understood that because I always thought that was a fantastic track. I just went on about how much I liked Off the Ground, but then I was going to say, well, he's played Cosmically Conscious, but then I'm like, was that even on the album? I don't remember if it was.
I don't know. I don't remember.
I know he's done that, I think, like, maybe once or twice. Since.
But I know people love Abe, with the new band, and it didn't, some things grab you, some things don't. It just didn't grab me, I like that old group.
Well, I like the old group, but I do like the new group.
Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind that old group, it also had Linda in it.
Well, of course, yeah.
So it's a lot closer to seeing something like Wings than the new group, which is...
And Robbie was just... I remember being in the stadium in the Orange Bowl in Orlando when I saw McCartney, and everybody was standing up pretty much all the way up to when Wicks started playing his Chet Atkins bit. I think it's called Thanks Chet. I think it was what it was called on Triple the Line Fantastic. And everybody just sat down and started listening. And when he played, it was just, fantastic. For me, I just don't have those. When McCartney and Hamish would sing "And I Love Her" together, and they would do the harmonies, and they didn't do it like the Beatles. They did it their way. I just miss those moments for me. They don't happen much. The only time that moment kind of happened for me was when Paul was playing ukulele and Wicks was walking behind him playing the accordion.
Yeah.
When they would do that bit in their more recent, when I say more recent, probably a decade ago concerts.
Yeah. Well, is that the version of Something?
Possibly.
Yeah. Because I know Macca plays the, ukulele on that. And I think there may have been accordion.
He, his new wife's kids go to school a stone's throw away from me. They go.
I know. That's what the guy at
College.
Rock and Roll Heaven was actually saying.
Yeah, and Paul has been seen, like, I would get texts for a while. Paul's at Wawa in Winter Park, and I'm like, really? Yeah, but he was, or he was at one of the restaurants on Park Avenue here. It's kind of cool, but if you met Paul McCartney, what would you say? What is there to say? There's nothing to say.
Hey, are you the drummer, or you're an Abe Laboriel Jr.'s band?
Oh yeah, really? He's one. I don't know. I don't know how
are
you feel
the
about
bass
it.
player from Brian Ray's group?
Aren't you the guy who? Aren't you the guy that Kanye West discovered? Yeah. I met my heroes. I got to play with the guys in NRBQ. I never got to play under the name NRBQ, which I always wanted to just fill in. And actually, I don't want to give too much of private conversations away, but it looked like there might be a glimmer of hope to do a fill-in gig one time under that band moniker. That's the band I always wanted to be in. And I've gotten to play with Terry Adams and Scott Ligon, who's their current guitar player. And anybody who's in the Chicago area probably knows Scott Ligon. Incredibly talented guy. He joined the band in like 04 or 08 or something. He's been with them. I've gotten to play with Big Al Anderson. I got to play 10 dates with Joey Spampanato, the bass player. Now, Joey, I was telling you about this, but for the listeners who don't know, if you've never heard of NRBQ, go watch Hail Hail Rock and Roll. That band sounds the way it does because Joey Spampanato is playing bass. He was handpicked by Keith Richards to play bass with that band, with Steve Jordan on drums and, of course, Johnny Johnson on piano and all of that. And this is the kind of musicians these guys are. Joey played bass in that. Keith Richards, when Wyman left the Stones, said, I want you to be in the Rolling Stones. So Joey went and auditioned for the Rolling Stones, and he had Keith Richards on one side of him and Ronnie Wood on the other, jamming out, and Mick Jagger was across playing keyboards and singing, and he could tell that the guys were trying to up the energy because they wanted him in the group. But Joey was in NRBQ and didn't want to leave what he had spent decades building. They didn't offer him the Stones gig, but I think Mick Jagger kind of put the kibosh on it, but Keith Richards wanted him. But then Eric Clapton asked Joey to go play some of the 24 nights at the Royal Albert Hall. While he was at the Royal Albert Hall, Wicks caught wind that he was there and got McCartney to invite him over to McCartney's place to sit in with that 92 band. The only one who wasn't there was Hamish. So they got to play like a bunch of Beatles songs, and Joey got to play bass with them. And when they were done, Paul says, how do you get that sound on bass? Because Joey has a very unique bass sound. It sounds like an upright bass. And he's like, well, I listened to early Beatles and Stones albums, and I tried to copy what I heard. So here's this guy who, like, Paul McCartney's asking him how he gets his bass sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Elvis Costello and Penn Jillette and Bonnie Raitt will all get emotional talking about how great this band is. I've gotten to play with my heroes, and I've gotten to meet them, and it was amazing. But if I met Paul McCartney, I think it would just be like, hey, Paul, like, what could you possibly say to Paul or Ringo that would be, they've done it all, they've seen it all, there's nothing you can do. I wouldn't want to meet them. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I can see what you mean there. Like, I don't know what I would say.
Yeah,
hey,
what would you say to them?
Did you die?
What was it like taking Paul McCartney's place?
Yeah. How have you been able to lie to the public for 54 years?
So I heard you have a theory about this, or you have something deep that you wanted to say about the whole Paul is dead thing.
Oh, no, I just mean, like, I can go on about that theory for ages. And I probably will at some point do an entire show about the Paul is dead rumor.
There's interesting tidbits that people have picked out, like the fact that his hair is brushed the opposite way after, and it's true. Like, even when we do our BeatleBeat shows, with my early wig, I do it one way, and my later look wig, which, by the way, I love, because it's like if I had my hair still, it's what my hair would look like. It's kind of like a Ray Romano wig more than a Paul McCartney wig. It's like Paul's...
Is that what it said on the box?
No, it's like more like a Wings wig, but I loved it so much that I still got it and use it. But you have to brush that the other way. The way he spoke in interviews was different. Some of the things that they point out in it is interesting, but I think it's still Paul McCartney.
I think so too. Like, it's really fun to get down that rabbit hole, but again, it's what a ridiculous, ludicrous rabbit hole to get down.
Now, I'm not sure that that's the real Ringo, but that's a different discussion.
Oh, poor
Well, let's
Ringo.
see
Poor
what
Ringo.
didn't we talk about so far?
I'm just looking over my notes. Okay, here's one. Why do the Beatles still matter?
That is a good question.
Or why do you think the Beatles still matter?
Do you know who Penn Jillette is? From Penn and
yeah.
Teller? Okay. So Penn is he's a magician, but he's a pretty deep thinker. And one of the videos I saw of him one time, he was talking about how fame doesn't matter. And he said, he talked to one of the people that he works with, a younger guy, and he said, name me the 4 Beatles. And the guy looked at him and said, Ringo, isn't there like a Bill? And so the point is that here's the greatest rock and roll band of all time. And kids today don't necessarily know them. They keep popping back up into pop culture. In 2009, the video game came out, and people who weren't familiar with the Beatles started playing the game and got familiar with it, but then put the game down. I think that what they did for music and being of their time was set the architecture for what came after it. And I think people who make money have looked at it and tried to duplicate it. I think New Kids on the Block was the mix of the Jackson 5, trying to do the Jackson 5 with the way the Beatles were publicized. I think something like the Spice Girls, where they made characters out of each person, certainly goes back to the Beatles and the fact that everybody knew everybody in the band.
Yeah.
I think there were people who will go back and always study the music and study not only the music but the marketing, and study how the thing was, how the business aspect of it worked, and we'll learn from it, and we're going to see trials of duplication of it over and over and over. I'm not one who says there's not going to be a next Beatles. I think that's too cynical. It just might not take the form that we think it'll take.
Could there already have been, like, a next Beatles that have just gone under the radar? Because a group that I really dig that has kind of earned that title, even though they're not as well known, XTC. They've been called, the closest thing to the Beatles that we've gotten since the Beatles.
There's quite a few others who have gotten that next Beatles moniker, and I don't know. I don't know. I think we've seen glimpses of Beatlemania, and I do air quotes Beatlemania, in some bands. I think Hanson had a glimmer of that with their popularity, and those guys played their own instruments. I think we'll see elements of it. Will we see all the elements of it? Was there another Beatles already?
I think the closest thing to the kind of global superstardom that someone from a different part of the world can come over here and be really successful when it hasn't really been done before. Because, back in the 60s, it was unheard of for British groups to come over here. The only group before the Beatles to have a #1 hit here was, or I say here, but I mean in the States, was Telstar by the Tornadoes.
We're all part of the Americas.
Yeah. I'm in North America.
You're in North America. We don't. We know that there's different countries. We all know that. We all know what separates us. We don't focus enough on what joins us, and we're all part of the same landmass.
Yeah.
So let's
And we share
let's
most
focus
of the
on
same accent.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's
Most. But I don't know what the rest of that is about.
A boot.
Yeah.
I think.
But wait, I was gonna say, like, the only group that I've seen, and it's been fairly recent. I'm not exactly a big fan of the music, but BTS.
BTS. I figured you were gonna say that.
Because that's never happened before, apart from back in 2012, like the Gangnam Style guy.
Right.
Someone from that area of music hadn't really become super successful over here.
There have been things that have popped up. I mean, we already mentioned the Spice Girls, and they had topped the charts here. Phil Collins, when he had his time in the 80s, and certainly Eric Clapton had a #1 hit here at least once per decade. I think him and Cher were in the battle of who was going to have the most consecutive, like, a #1 in each decade. But I don't know what it's going to look like. I think we're going to see another Beatles, and it'll be I have heard, and I'm not familiar with them, but I've heard that the album OK Computer
by Radiohead
is like that. It's like that generation's Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
To them, I embarrassingly, I've never heard it. I've never heard that.
I have a friend who is like a diehard Radiohead fan, and he, scoffs at me because I've never listened to them. But they've undoubtedly influenced a whole generation of musicians the same way that the Beatles did, 50 years ago.
I just think that it's going to look different,
It won't be like four guys from Liverpool.
Right. Rock and roll looked different than the big band swing music that came before it,
Yeah.
And certainly, Led Zeppelin looked... Oh, and by the way, I would just like to say this for all your listeners. The Who are hands down a better band than Led Zeppelin.
Yes, that is a fact.
Yes.
Well, actually, I want to interrupt you there. You bring up The Who. I love talking about The Who. And this, I think, will be like the last kind of thing I want to ask you. Early Who or later Who? Or actually, no. Early Who, middle Who, or later Who?
So I assume when you say early Who, that's the Keith Moon years. Kenny Jones years is the middle Who.
Okay.
And then Zach for the later years?
Okay, no, let me redefine what I mean here. The early Who, I mean till, like, everything before Tommy. Then I consider, like, the middle years, like, Tommy through Who Are You? And then the later years is everything since, like, Face Dances.
I have the, what is it, Maximum Overdrive box set?
Maximum R&B, or whatever it's called.
I would say if I had to pick one, I tend to gravitate towards the early stuff. And the reason why is Pete didn't have his shtick down yet. What you saw from, like, Woodstock on became the... I know he was breaking guitars earlier than that.
Yeah.
But if you watch, like, Ready, Steady, Go with them doing Can't Explain, if you look at Pete, it's not the Pete that we knew later.
No.
Right?
It's not the whole stereotypical, I'm doing a windmill for the listeners out there.
It's not the Roger that we would come to know and love later, really.
No, the Roger...
He was trying to do like a Ray Charles kind of old black bluesy guy kind of stance, and but Keith Moon was Keith Moon.
Yeah, Keith Moon didn't change,
and he was young and vibrant and just on top of the game. And God, it's just beautiful to see.
Entwistle didn't really change either.
Nah, he didn't change too much. There wasn't there wasn't much to change, but he did his
voice got lower,
and his approach to the bass became. Before I became a Joey Spampanato fan, where they changed the way I played my instrument, which is palm muting and playing like an upright. I was into Entwistle, so I played with 3 fingers on my right hand and a lot of triplets, and I was trying to do some tapping and all of that stuff. And it really, his style really progressed into this crazy, you know, when I got to see him with the Ringo All-Star Band. But,
really?
Oh yeah, I saw Entwistle.
Did you see him do Boris the Spider with that? Oh my god.
Yep. Yeah, it was very cool. It was the only member of the Who that I've gotten to see. His style changed, but his stage persona never really changed. But I just love watching any footage that I can find, you know, from the Kids Are All Right video movie to, you know, any of the videos with before the drugs really started affecting him, you know, when he was just young and just a hot rod on drums.
If you're ever like feeling down and you want like a good pick-me-up, the best thing to do is go...
Ed?
The best thing you can do is go watch some of those early Who promo clips of like the Happy Jack video where it's like they're like robbing a place and then there's a cake, and then the video which appears in The Kids Are All Right with oh god, what's the name of the song? Is it Cobwebs and Strange? Like the
I know the name of the song. I'm not as deep on the names of that stuff.
I can't remember the name, but it's actually the video for the song "Call Me Lightning." That video is very fun.
I love the version of Roadrunner on that. I just the pick scrape on the guitar, and it's just so raw and nasty. I love it.
Well, I love the weirdly ornate Who of the mid-'60s, like the Who Sellout, like A Quick One, where they're doing like some really cool things.
Yeah. Do you think that they got pushed from Rock and Roll Circus because they were much better than everybody else?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too.
No, you see that video when they did A Quick One, they completely upstaged the Stones, who had like a malfunctioning Lennon. Brian Jones.
Yeah. And Lennon, I thought they just made those guys look like amateurs.
Which,
you know, the Who just are incredible. And then I mentioned the concert, Paul McCartney's the concert for New York City from after the 9/11 attacks, when the Who were on that, just ferocious, and again destroyed everybody else who was on that show.
Just like the applause alone, like everyone freaked out when the Who came on.
Yep. And I don't know how you get about music and stuff. I get emotional about things. I'm not such a stoic, manly man that things affect me. And just thinking about when the actor was announcing them, who was that? That was the one who was in Serendipity. He was older Brian Wilson in...
Oh, John Cusack.
Cusack. Yeah, he was the one who announced them with an Irish police officer. And just incredible. What a tragedy that happened, but what an incredible performance that came out of it. Just really, really good.
And to end on a funny note before we go into the, plugging and promoting or whatever, I'll leave you with one more controversial opinion. The best Rolling Stones album is their Satanic Majesty's Request.
I'll give you another controversial thing that we don't find controversial, but everybody else will.
Yeah.
The Monkees' Head is the worst Monkees album, and the movie is. Oh, you don't agree?
I don't agree with that.
Oh, it's the worst Monkees album.
You thought you had a confidant here.
I thought I did, but
no,
that's all right.
I love the Head album.
Oh, it's just abysmal. It's just terrible. But with that being said, like, there's the hooks of the songs I like. Like Can You Dig It? I like the hook. And Merrily As We Go Along. No, As We Go Along. I like the hook. I like the chorus. But there's nothing about those verses or the mixing of the album that saves it for me. I could pick.
That's an album that could do with a good remix.
Yeah. And they didn't use somebody who knew the Monkees. Somebody on one of the Monkees, when they reviewed Head, said that, well, it's much different than anything else the Monkees did. Yeah, and I liked everything else the Monkees did. I'm a big, gigantic Monkees fan, but Head just didn't hit it for me. Sorry.
Well, and now we get to a favorite part of the show. I want to ask you, what would you like to plug if you could plug anything?
Well, let me plug this podcast first. Thank you so much for having me on it, and I've listened to quite a few of the shows, not all of them.
I don't blame you. There's been so many.
I listened to the ones with Artie Saraf and Ron McNeil. I listened to the Mitch Wiseman one. I was just listening to the one with Lawrence Juber recently, and a few of the other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head. But you do an excellent job. So I just want to say thank you, if you've made it this far in this podcast with me, which is going to be the lowest rated podcast of them all. I just want to say thank you. I
wouldn't say that.
I will say we didn't really talk about the Parrothead world too much, and
for the best.
I do want to say if you ever get a chance to go out and check out some of the trop rock music and the musicians who are doing it, if that music interests you at all, there's a lot of fantastic musicians out there. And if you like that kind of music, check out all of Jim Morris and the Big Bamboo Band. Check out, Jim died a few years ago, and he was an excellent singer-songwriter and a good friend, probably the best band leader I ever worked for. A beautiful guy, and was just taken too soon. He flew out from Florida to a gig in Seattle, and I was supposed to be on the job. I was supposed to be on the gig, but I ended up not doing the job. He got out there, and while he was at the airport, suffered a brain aneurysm.
Oh, wow.
And was rushed to the hospital and passed away out there. And it was such a shame, because the guy was on top of the world and just a beautiful guy. But Sonny Jim White, John Frenzy, who I worked for years, Jimmy Pappas, my buddy Jimmy Pappas, who plays a lot of that. He's like a mix of James Taylor and Jimmy Buffett kind of stuff. There's a lot of different styles in that world, so go check that out. As far as my stuff is concerned, you could check out my original music. I have 2 albums, but I don't know why you would. If you like skeet shooting, you can buy them and pull. It's good for that. If drink coasters, it's good for. It's an eclectic mix of a lot of my influences, and I have music on there that I still listen to, and I think, oh, that's a good song. I really like that song. So I'm not completely displeased with what I've done, but like a lot of people, you listen back and you wish you had done some things different. Like I will when I hear this interview. I'll say, boy, I wish I hadn't talked so much.
Man, I wish Ethan had edited this better.
If you just edit out all the parts where I talk and leave in the parts you talk, it'll be much better. BeatleBeat is my current Beatles tribute band. I've been with them since, it's probably the band I've been with the longest. I've been with them since about 2014. And we used to play, and I was playing Right-Handed Paul. And every show, no matter how, listen, I'm playing with guys who their day job was to go to Epcot and be Beatles. This was their day job. Leo Rojo and my good pal Jimmy, and Willie Rast is our drummer, and Willie and I have been on more musical adventures. I've played with some of my musical heroes, but I'll take Willie anywhere and have him play drums with me on anything. Top notch, just top of the heap of the guys I've worked with. But they're all fantastic, and I'm blessed to get to play music with them. And I was doing the Beatles shows with them, and I was playing right-handed, and no matter how good it went, I'd always have somebody come up to me and say, well, yeah, but Paul was right-handed. And it's like, yeah, no crap. I mean, he was left-handed, sorry, but Paul was left-handed. I'm like, no crap, but I'm right-handed. What am I supposed to do? And one of the other Paul guys in town said to me, well, if you're right-handed, you can't play left-handed. And I'm like, well, that's crap, because Artie Saroff does it, and Jim Miller in New Jersey does it.
Gary Grimes from 1964 did it.
Yeah, that's right. Gary Grimes did it, and R.I.P. And so I started.
Mitch tried to do it.
And Mitch is left-handed. He is left-handed and plays righty. So it took me about a year. It took me about a year of trying. I started doing the first 3 songs lefty, and then we would do You Want to Know a Secret? And I would switch to the right-handed bass. And then after a few gigs, I just looked at the guys. I'm like, I'm going to do the whole thing lefty. And I've been doing it left-handed ever since. And it's a blast, man. Our BeatleBeat show plays when it's not COVID. Hopefully by the time this airs, there's no more COVID. But we play once a month on the Victory Casino Cruise out of Cocoa Beach. And that's the full costume show. Lately, we've been playing a lot of what I call unwigged shows, where we play out of costume, and we get to just be ourselves and play the music, and that makes me happy. I enjoy that. Other than that, I don't really have much else to plug. This is a world. It's this Beatle thing. I've learned now there's a Beatle world out there that I didn't know about because I was so into the Buffett world. Just immerse yourself in the world. Listen to all these podcasts. Listen to Ethan. Listen to Kit. Listen to Plastic. Listen to, whatever else is out there. There's just stuff, and I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Well, before we mention those people, I'll do my little spiel that I have to do at the end of the episode. Let's see if I can say this tongue twister. Are you ready? This is quite a feat.
Go for it.
All right, so if you're listening to this on YouTube, which a lot of you seem to do, if you haven't already, please hit that big red subscribe button, and also hit that bell notification icon. Charlie, you don't need to do the interpretive miming because they can't see you.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah. But yeah, Charlie's pointing down. So, just, you can visualize that. If you don't know already, or if you prefer it, we're available to stream everywhere good podcasts can be heard. So, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, Podbay, whatever you choose, iHeartRadio.com, everywhere. We're inescapable. And, actually, earlier this year, it was made official. I joined another Beatle podcast, my good friends over at When They Was Fab. I am now the 3rd co-host, so if you want to hear more of my overbearing nasal voice, you can go over there and listen to me talk about things with people who actually know what they're talking about. But yeah, we're on Facebook at Fans on the Run Podcast. We're on Twitter at Fans on the Run Pod, because it wouldn't let me fit the whole word. And Instagram at Fans on the Run Podcast, where you can see all the cool artwork I do for the shows. Whew, there we go. And lastly, he's been waiting for this the whole episode, if he's actually listened to the whole thing. You can occasionally find Charlie and I over at our friend Plastic EP's pages, where you can find us talking about the Beatles, find us talking about the Monkees. More so him, not so much me. But, I pop in now and then. But,
definitely.
Yeah.
Always fun.
But, yeah, there we go. Charlie, thank you so much for doing the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm sorry.
You have nothing. I'm sorry. Are you saying sorry about that thing you said earlier in the show?
I'm sorry about the whole interview.
Oh.
I hope
no,
you have
this has actually been
things.
one of the most enjoyable interviews I've done in a long while.
Oh, thank you.
But to everyone else out there, thank you for listening. You can go home now.
Fans on the Run is produced by Ethan Alexanian. Additional voiceovers by Richard Phillip. This has been a Showtown production.